Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Councilor McGee, can you hear us okay? Okay, great. We have a quorum with you, Councilor McGee, Councilor Jang, and I, and so I'm going to call us to order at 5:36 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is, of course, the agenda, and I would welcome a motion to adopt it. So moved as Thank you, Councilor Jang. Second by Councilor McGee. Any discussion of the agenda? Do we need to change anything? No. Order or anything? Seeing no discussion, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the agenda is adopted. We will go next to the public forum, and I'm looking here in the room. Are you here to speak at the public forum? No. Okay, and is there anyone online that is indicating that they want to be raised?
Those of you who are online, I see there are phone numbers. And so you can't raise a hand in that function, but I have temporarily given you permission to talk, so you can unmute yourselves now and join us for public forum if you would like to.
Okay, so it does not appear that we have anyone who wants to speak at public forum, so we will close the public forum. Excuse me, and move to the consent agenda, which has 4 items on it. I would welcome a motion regarding adopting the consent agenda.
I would move that we adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Second by Councilor Jang. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that brings us to the deliberative part of the agenda for approval and recommendation to the City Council. The first item on the agenda is an item that I really welcome. Has gotten to the point where it's ready to move forward. This is something we have been working on, planning for some time, and this is a Fire Station 2 dormitory renovation. The purpose of which to give this facility the better support having both the men and women firefighters, and thank you for getting into this point. You want to tee us off for us further?
Sure. So back in 2019, right after I started working for the city, actually, we did a renovation for the bathroom areas in Fire Station 2 so that there were private spaces for anybody to use any bathroom facility regardless of their gender. And now it is time for us to go ahead and renovate the dormitory spaces also for equality in gender spaces. So we've worked with Doran Whittier, who is an architect who's done a lot of work with the city, and designed the space so that we can have 5 individual dormitory spaces. And what we did to kind of change up that space is we're taking some space from the kitchen / desk area and rebuilding the desk area on the side so we can have more bedroom spaces. So you know, it's really important to the fire team to be able to invite people of all genders to be in the station, and this is the way to accomplish that.
Great, thank you, Jen. Thanks for your hard work on this, and I remember the bathroom renovation as well, and is, I think, our second busiest station and, important. So with that, the floor is open. Welcome a motion or discussion.
Yes, thank you for bringing the mitigation as part of this. I think it's and happy to make the motion as indicated.
Councilor Jang, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously and next time we have Chief Champlain there, maybe we should, I think these initiatives are having an impact. We are still not where we'd like to be in terms of gender mix the firefighters, but we have substantially expanded the number of women that are in the fire department. I think it's investments like this that'll make it bring us to our goal. If you look around the country, cities that make this kind of commitment consistently have very different. It's an overwhelmingly male profession, but cities that really make an effort to support women in this profession can have a real impact. And this work should be that. With that, we will go to 4.2, Balanced and Restorative Justice Amendment. Balanced and Restorative Justice Amendment approval. CJC item. Thank you, Kim. And while you're here, let me just say to you personally how happy I am to see the painters outside. They've already got, if you haven't been by City Hall recently, the Church Street side is primed and started scraping on the City Hall Park side, and you can see the gold dome from around the city, I'm told now.
It's been a doozy, but we're very excited about it.
It's not just aesthetic, it's keeping this building from falling apart.
I'm removing lead paint.
Yeah, so, okay, Brian, welcome. Why don't you tee this up for us?
Sure, the Balanced and Restorative Justice program is funded by the state of Vermont, the Department for Children and Families. It is a intervention early in young people's lives to hopefully prevent future interactions with the criminal legal system. It is entirely a prevention model, and the state of Vermont has essentially increased the grant amount, and so you're being asked basically to approve more money, which we thought, we know we have to ask for it, but we thought you'd have no problem with that.
Great, thank you. Brian, the floor is open for questions or a motion. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thanks, Mayor. Brian, is this additional funding that the state approved? Is it covering more work over the term of the contract or extending the contract?
It actually just simply allows more hours to be spent working with young people who are just as involved.
Great, thanks. And I'm also happy to make the motion as indicated on Civic Clerk.
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Councilor McGee. Thank you, President Paul. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Brian. This brings us to 4.3, a FEMA hazard mitigation grant for 389 Riverside Avenue, EPI. Project great, and I think we have Scott Guston here to kick this off for us. Welcome, Scott. Want to say a few words to get this one teed up?
Sure. Good evening, all. So the real quick background on this, there was a slide back in October of 2019, landslide affecting this property and two neighboring commercial properties that initiated some further investigation of slope stability for those properties. There was, I'll call it a close-up evaluation. I think it was April of 22. With folks from the state, including the state geologist and others. Norm Baldwin, I think, was there as well. And the upshot of that more in-depth analysis was that one of those three properties, this one at 389 Riverside Avenue, was found to be at imminent risk of slide. There were cracks in the foundation. There were pressure cracks in the soils around the property. The trees are leaning. The retaining walls are bowing. So none of that looks good. So we followed up with state emergency management folks. They have funding available for matches on these FEMA hazard mitigation grants. So we proceeded to apply for hazard mitigation grant for the property with the consent and interest of the property owner, of course. Sort of a slow process, but fast forward to today, we've been approved for the grant of, I think it's about $460,000. And that amounts to appraising the property, demolishing everything on the property, converting it to green space, and it becomes city property. It's 90% FEMA funding, and as I mentioned, the state is providing the 10% match. So that's the real quick overview.
Great, thank you, Scott. Floor is open for discussion, for questions, or motions. Councilor McGee.
Thanks, Mayor. Scott, I'm curious as like once the slide occurred, has somebody still been living in the residence that's on the property, or is it condemned in any way?
Folks are living there.
Okay.
It's a rental property.
Okay. When I saw the item on the agenda, I went and looked on Google Maps very quickly, and even with like the 3D capability that it has, which doesn't always work that well in Burlington, you can tell that it's kind of sitting on a very precarious ledge. So
Yeah.
I was just curious about that. Well, I'm glad that this grant was approved and that this work can happen. Unless there are other questions, I'd be happy to make the motion.
Yes, we do. I will take that as a motion.
Was that a motion?
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll second.
Thank you, President Paul. Councilor James.
Yeah, so it seems that there are two neighboring properties, and what's the plan for those? There is no effect? They won't be affected at all in the future?
The two neighboring properties are commercial. They were evaluated the same day, same process as this one was. I'm no engineer, but the short answer is that those two properties were not found to be at imminent risk of slide.
Now, those were duplexes, and the city is planning on demolishing it, right? As part of-
389 is a duplex. Yes, it's a rental duplex.
So basically, city would purchase the property and demolish it.
It would become city property as a vacant parcel.
No further question. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Scott and Norm, for your
Thank
work.
you.
Okay, we're making good progress here. We got two items left. 4.4 is the Champlain Parkway Cooperative Agreement. Amendment number 8. Welcome. Siphon, and we saw Norm for this one as well. Why don't you give us a summary what this what Amendment 8 is all about? Norm's gonna lead the way.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Norm.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. Just to give you context, this is an amendment with the state of Vermont for the grant agreement. This grant agreement amendment allows or provisions a reimbursement for costs that are being assumed but under this Parkway contract. Under normal V-Trans process, they don't give us the full amount of the contract value at the start. They give it amendments in a series of amendments as the needs arise. And so we are at a stage now with the development of the project where the state feels it's time to further obligate or amend the cooperative agreement that covers those costs of construction. So it's really critically important that we accept this grant opportunity. Otherwise, we assume these costs with no clear line of support for these high dollar costs of construction. So we have a very favorable local match of 95.32, 2% being local match, and the rest being either federal or state obligation. This project has 2 areas of local match obligation. One is the 2% that I talked about that is carried by street capital, and the other is carried by what is non-participating costs. Those non-participating costs are landscaping, lighting, and soils. And obviously soils are a big component of that bond cost. And I just would note that there is some there was a note within this communication about an additional need for that bond or capital funds for those non-participating costs. But we are working with the CT office to talk through solutions to that. It's not fully completely clear as to what that final roll-up will be as we complete phase 1 construction, given that we are talking about volumetrics that are estimates and not actual costs. There is some soil costs that are being assumed by the city at this point, but we'll be seeking reimbursement from the Petroleum Cleanup Fund. On Flint Avenue, there was a significant amount of petroleum contaminated soils that were captured and disposed of. We are going to be seeking reimbursement from the state. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but we are continuing to advance, and we are very hopeful that in the end that this project will be complete in the spring, and as we progress, we'll have further clarity about finite finances for the project itself. I don't know if there's any other questions that council members may have. I'm happy to entertain that.
It's a good summary, Storm. Thank you. Yes, we'll open up the floor for questions, discussion, or a motion. Councilor Jang.
Yep, the motion indicated civic.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, President Paul. Discussion of item 4.4, the Champlain Parkway Cooperative Agreement Amendment. Councilor McGee, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Chapin and Norm, I don't have a question specifically related to the agreement, but we haven't had a council update on the Parkway project in some time, so I was curious if you could quickly let us know how it's progressing. It seems to me, at least from my own observations, that it's moving pretty quickly, so which is exciting.
Yep. So I would note that we are certainly ahead of schedule with the project. It was early in the summer. It was anticipated that we would be complete by the end of this construction season with punch list items. It doesn't appear that that's exactly the case as we get closer to the end of construction season. I think there is some procurement challenges with some of our power, basically power supply that they had ordered cable for power in last January and won't be here till February. So as a result, we've had to face some delays and relocate poles to be able to do the capital infrastructure work. And then in the spring, basically pull those cables, make those connections and remove those poles. So there's been some delays as a result of, trying to do the capital work in the way of having utilities in the way, particularly on Lakeside Avenue. But that coupled the fact that we have some elements that need to have favorable weather. And as we get closer to the end of October, the temperatures are not prudent for some of those installations, particularly the tabled intersections or crosswalks.
Okay,
Councilor McGee, if I may.
sure.
I think one of the important pieces here is that we will be coming back to you soon to talk about the South End Construction Coordination Plan. We have been keeping the TUC up to date. They did a site walk, I think last month, 2 months ago on the Champlain Parkway. And then we did an update on the Rail Yard Enterprise project this last month. Given the new projects, or at least new grants for Bank Street and Cherry Street, we are looking at expanding the South End Construction Coordination Plan to a South End Downtown Coordination Plan. And we'll be coming to you within probably 4 to 6 weeks to look at where we are now with all the projects, now that it's been about a year, and reflect what decisions need to be made when and how these projects fit together to minimize construction impact. So you ask a good question and it's coming soon.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's good.
And I mean, I think I was especially speaking about the coordinator plan.
Yeah.
What I have noticed before that, my meeting with the director of electric that came up. They were already some work being done on Pine Street. But the poles are still. But now, it seemed that it would be coming back again to put the pole on the ground. And I was just wondering why wasn't it an opportunity for like a combined pole so that the impact on the walkers, bikers, and drivers wouldn't be that way. So then, it just ways of working.
Right. Norm can speak to the details of this. We are very well coordinated with utilities. The challenge on Lakeside, right around the corner from Pine Street, where some of the poles will be staying through the winter, are related to supply chain challenges, not a lack of coordination. Norm, do you want to add any to detail to that?
Yeah, I mean, as I explained, the power cabling was ordered in last January and won't be here to February, and it's an unusual case. And I've talked quite a bit with BED about that, but there's unfortunately no other solution. We've basically scoured North America to find power cable to support the project to allow it to continue on schedule, and it's unfortunate, but that's kind of where we're at. It couldn't be avoided.
We're sorry for that additional impact, and it is an additional impact, Councilor Jang.
Largely, it's not a deep financial challenge. It's really more of a delay to seeing its completion to its full extent this fall as opposed to spring.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good. Okay, there are no further questions. I think we still need a. So we have a motion already and a second on this, so we will go to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And
Great. Thank you, everyone.
yeah, thank you. And just to make sure the point is clear, even though now some work will be completed in the spring, that's still significantly ahead of the original bid schedule.
That is correct.
Right? Can you walk us through that just so we're all?
Yeah, there's two parts of the Champlain Parkway project, the initial construction contract and the final construction contract. We're only talking about the initial construction contract, which is the middle portion of the project from Home Avenue to Kilburn Street. And we are expecting, as Norm said, even though it's not as aggressive and as ahead of schedule as we were expecting, still to be ahead of schedule with completion next spring or early summer. Then we will be returning to council to talk about how the final construction contract phase interfaces with all the other projects happening in the south end and downtown.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to the final item
Everyone.
of the night, which is the 4.5 request for approval of contract for emergency Winooski River Siphon repair work. I know the water resources team, DPW team, Champlain hustled to did a lot of things since the break in July, but specifically to get ready so we can act on this tonight. And see Megan Martin are here as well. So Megan, you want to tee this one up for us?
Sure, yes, and we do appreciate folks moving it quickly to get it on this Board of Finance agenda. We received bids 2 p.m. on Friday, and with the bids, we only received one bid from ECI, and they, in their bid packet, really focused on the fact that they needed to proceed with this work immediately in order to ensure that it could happen before winter. And so that is why we are bringing it forward to you now, and with the intention of executing a contract and then proceeding to City Council for sort of after the fact approval, relying on the approval of the Board of Finance. I think you're all familiar with everything that's happened. This is sort of the phase 3 of our long-term project, which is trying to get as best of an in-river Band-Aid on the existing pipe as possible, so that we don't have to rely and run the temporary bypass throughout the winter. We, at the same time, are going to be doing a alternatives evaluation and design process for a climate resilient approach, but that's going to be much further out as far as construction. And so this is really the best thing that we can do for the winter time. The really good news is that FEMA is, in fact, viewing this as part of the emergency repair package and not the permanent fix, meaning that we should still be able to access FEMA and other funding in order to implement this sort of long-term climate resilient repair, which could include anything from a modern underneath the river directionally drilled approach, or even potentially turning it into a formal pump station and landside force main. So any other questions or?
Excellent, thank you, Megan. Yes, floor is open for questions, Councilor Jang.
Thank you very much for bringing this up. Great. People. It seems it's not very clear from my perspective that yes, 75% of these expenses will be covered by FEMA, right? 12% by the city, another 12% by the state. But at the same time, you have to also be extra careful in documenting everything in order to be able to some of your basis, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we continue further as part of this memo, and it said if the extent of the Vermont damage exceeds certain threshold, $111 million, and then available for the cost. I wasn't very clear.
Yep. So if I understood the question correctly, we are still waiting, and then our last meetings with FEMA, they're still tracking whether or not Vermont has reached the overall threshold. If Vermont as a whole exceeds the sort of, I think they had said it was like $111 million statewide, then the cost share proportion goes from the 25% down to the 10%. And my understanding is that the state would cover half of that, and we would only have to cover half of it. So that's certainly advantageous for us, although it will mean, in fact, that Vermont got pounded pretty hard. But if everybody can document that total amount, then we'll be able to have a lower cost share. But we're proceeding with the assumption that we might have to cover up to 12.5% of the total project cost, with the fingers crossed hope that it'll be a lesser amount. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes. So basically, you just erring in the side portion.
Correct. We want to show the ratepayers and the council the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note, one thing I'd add to Megan's piece, if I may, is just this force main, which is above ground, hasn't, it doesn't have the same kind of protections and redundancies as the normal system has in place. We've already had some challenges this fall. Trying to maintain it over a winter would be a Herculean feat, and this really is the right thing to do, and we felt like it was better to rush this through the approval process than to take a risk that we couldn't get the repair done this fall.
Thank you, and I'm happy to make a motion as indicated.
Great, thank you, Councilor Jang. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, President Paul. Discussion. Okay, seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you again, team EW Resources, for all the work on this. It's been a huge push since July, and continues to feel like a really challenging circumstance. We've made a lot of progress, and appreciate the attention to making it possible to get as much FEMA and state reimbursement as possible to mitigate the impacts on finance. So
We appreciate that, and Martin and Ashley, who worked on the
Yes.
memo over the weekend, deserve special appreciation.
Kate, yep,
Oh, thank you, Kate and
also
Martin.
Kate.
Yeah,
And next time, maybe this way say, the director, they write it there too, because most of we authorize director fire, we tell the time. Say on the for the report,
okay,
in 25 years from now, we know it was you.
yes. Thank you, Councilor Chang.
So that concludes our agenda. I will just take the liberty to quickly say, I am anticipating calling a Board of Finance meeting next Tuesday before the council meeting. Should be a brief meeting, but we have had another team that's been working very hard and has had success securing state support for a winter warming shelter, which is answering one of the big questions with the homelessness challenges that we're facing currently. As you all know, the New Place shelter has just shifted management to CDOEO and CHT, which we're very pleased about having long-term operators of that facility. However, it is no longer going to function as an emergency winter warming shelter the way it has in recent years. So this is an important item and one that we need to move quickly on as well to get the work done and get this open. So it's possible. It's likely that that's the only item on the agenda. It will be a brief meeting, but I just want to give the board a heads up that we will. And President Paul and I will work out the exact timing details of the whole evening. We're meeting tomorrow, I believe, to do that or sometime soon. And but just want to give you all a heads up on that now. And with that, if there's no objection, the business of the Board of Finance is concluded. And so we are adjourned at 6:09 p.m. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Might even be home for dinner.